The day my stepsister moved in, I felt the world inside my home shift almost imperceptibly, like a floorboard creaking in the middle of the night. My routine was usually as neat and predictable as the rows of cups in my kitchen cabinet: work, dinner with my husband, chores, the occasional phone call to a friend. I had learned to live inside this order, to find comfort in small things and not expect much beyond them. But when she arrived, arms full of mismatched bags, hair in a loose knot, eyes sparkling with something that made me feel both protective and uneasy, I realized nothing would be quite the same. She was 25, so much younger than me, and she radiated an energy I hadn't felt in years. I noticed the way she looked at the world, the way she took up space in a room without even trying. Her laughter rang out easily, a sound that lingered in the corners of our apartment even after she left the room. She wore old t-shirts and left her books scattered across the couch, her shoes abandoned near the door. In the first days, her presence unsettled me, not in any obvious way, but in the subtle details I could not ignore. I found myself hyper-aware of her movements, the gentle clink of her mug in the morning, the way her perfume hung in the air long after she disappeared down the hallway. Sometimes she would breeze through the kitchen, humming softly to herself, barefoot, her ankles slim and delicate against the tile floor. I pretended not to watch, but every detail seemed to pull at me. My husband, as always, was caught up in work, his life a tapestry of late meetings and missed dinners, so the evenings often left the two of us alone. She filled the quiet with stories, jokes, and sometimes just her easy silence, a kind of calm that crept into the rooms after a long day. I noticed how my pulse quickened when she sat close to me on the couch, how my hand would twitch toward hers before I caught myself. I dismissed it as nerves or perhaps jealousy of her youth, her lightness, the way she still believed in possibility. But there was something else there too, something I was not ready to name. As the days passed, the boundaries of my safe, familiar world began to blur. She left her jacket on my favorite chair, her lipstick in the bathroom drawer next to my own. She made herself at home in the kitchen, rearranging the spices and teasing me about my taste in tea. I told myself I resented the intrusion, the way she upended my quiet, the way she made me feel things I thought I'd buried years ago. But at night, lying awake in the half-dark, I realized that what unsettled me most was not the chaos she brought, but the part of myself she awakened, a longing I had not known I was still capable of feeling. I didn't know what to do with it, so I tried to pretend it wasn't there. But even then, I knew it was only a matter of time before I stopped pretending. Living under the same roof with her became a delicate dance, each day pulling me a little closer to the edge of something I couldn't yet define. The first weeks passed with small adjustments, her things mixing with mine, her laughter echoing down the hallway, the smell of her coconut shampoo clinging to the bathroom air. Our routines began to overlap. I would find her in the kitchen early in the morning, sitting at the counter with a mug of coffee, her hair wild from sleep, scrolling on her phone or scribbling in a notebook. Sometimes she would look up and smile, a lazy, intimate gesture that felt like it reached past my skin into the quietest part of me. She started to feel like a constant in my days, her presence woven into every corner of my home. She lingered in the living room after dinner, bare feet propped on the edge of the couch, humming along to the music I played. She moved through the apartment as if she belonged, claiming space with the confidence of someone who had never known rejection. I was surprised by how much I wanted her there, even as I told myself I should be cautious. My husband's schedule remained as busy as ever, leaving long stretches of evening just for the two of us. The silences between us grew more comfortable, yet more charged. We shared meals, swapped stories, watched old movies in the dim light of the TV. Sometimes she would lean against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder, and I would freeze, every sense alive to the point of aching. She brought warmth and color to my carefully managed world, her joy infectious, her energy unstoppable. I started noticing the smallest things, the curve of her mouth when she smiled, the way she tucked her feet under herself on the armchair, the gentle arch of her eyebrow when she teased me. At times, our closeness felt innocent, nothing more than the easy intimacy of women sharing a home. But then she would brush past me in the hallway, her hand grazing my arm, and heat would flare beneath my skin, leaving me breathless. There were moments when I caught her looking at me, her gaze steady and unreadable, and I would have to look away before my thoughts betrayed me. I tried to bury my confusion beneath routines, laundry, emails, grocery lists, yet it followed me everywhere, growing stronger with each passing day. I wondered what she felt, whether she noticed the tension that hummed between us, whether she, too, was drawn to the way our lives were becoming entwined. Living together had changed everything, even if I still pretended otherwise. With every laugh we shared, every touch that lingered a moment too long, I felt the old walls inside me begin to crumble, making space for something dangerous and beautiful that I was no longer sure I wanted to resist. The evening the storm rolled in was the night everything changed. Rain drummed against the windows, thunder echoed through the walls, and a sudden blackout pulled our apartment into a hushed twilight. I moved through the rooms lighting candles, my hands trembling a little more than I would admit, the flicker of each flame casting new shadows and painting her features in gold and honey. She joined me at the kitchen table, our faces close in the circle of warm light, her hair tumbling over her shoulder as she shuffled a deck of old playing cards, inviting me with a smile to join her. The world outside faded to darkness and wind, and inside, time seemed to slow and thicken, settling between us like a secret only we could hear. We played cards for a while, laughing and letting the storm provide our soundtrack. With each hand, our touches became a little bolder, a brush of fingers as we exchanged cards, a quick nudge beneath the table, a lingering glance that made my chest feel tight and hollow at once. Her presence was magnetic, drawing me in, and I felt my own restraint falter with every accidental touch. When the laughter faded into silence, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, her palm warm, her fingers gentle, but there was nothing casual about the way she held on. I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. I looked at our hands, hers smaller, softer, almost trembling as much as mine, and felt the world tilt. The candlelight flickered and danced across her skin, and I found myself caught in the gravity of her gaze, pulled deeper by the unspoken question there. The air felt thick, electric, as if every molecule was waiting for us to decide. For a heartbeat, it was just that, a moment suspended between before and after, between pretending and admitting the truth. Then she stood, slow and deliberate, and came to my side, her movements so natural and sure that it made me ache with longing. She knelt beside my chair, close enough that I could feel her breath on my collarbone, her eyes searching mine for hesitation. There was none. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain she could hear it. Her hands slid along my arms, settling on my waist, her body pressed lightly against my side. She kissed me then, softly at first, her lips featherlight and questioning, but as I leaned in, helpless, hungry, surrendering, it deepened. I clung to her, my fingers tangled in her hair, letting go of the last thread of denial. In those moments, every touch was discovery. Her mouth traced a line along my jaw, down my neck, slow and reverent, as if she was mapping a new country. My body responded instinctively, a rush of heat and warmth surging through me, banishing the fear that had kept me frozen for so long. Her hands slid beneath my shirt, caressing my back, her skin hot against mine. I gasped as her lips found the hollow of my throat, shivering as her fingers wandered lower, bolder now, exploring every inch as if she needed to memorize me. Clothes fell away, careless and eager, until there was nothing left between us but breath and skin and the tremor of wanting finally unleashed. I let her guide me to the floor, the soft rug beneath us a grounding anchor while outside the storm raged on. She worshipped my body with her mouth, her tongue tracing circles on my skin, her hands exploring, coaxing, drawing out sounds I hadn't made in years. I surrendered, giving myself over to her, letting my pleasure bloom in waves, my body arching into her touch, my name dissolving on her lips as I fell apart beneath her. When at last I opened my eyes, the candles were burning lower, the storm outside had gentled, and she lay beside me, her breath steady, her eyes luminous and searching. There was no shame, only the certainty that we had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I reached for her hand, held it tight, and let the truth settle quietly between us, knowing nothing would ever be the same. The day after our night together dawned gray and heavy, the kind of morning where sunlight barely makes it through the curtains. I woke tangled in the sheets, the scent of her still lingering on my skin, a memory that felt dangerously close to a dream. For a moment, before reality settled, I let myself float in the afterglow of her hands and mouth, in the memory of her body pressed against mine. Then the weight of what we had done settled into my chest, a mix of longing and guilt so sharp it nearly stole my breath. Every room in the apartment held some trace of her now. Her lipstick on the bathroom counter, her book left open on the coffee table, a sweater tossed across the back of the couch. These small things became reminders, as if our secret was hiding in plain sight. I moved through the day with a strange duality, on the surface, performing the rituals of my old life, coffee with my husband, tidying the kitchen, answering emails. Beneath it all, I felt raw, exposed, every nerve ending alive with the memory of the night before. Seeing her in the morning kitchen, hair damp from the shower, wearing an old t-shirt that hung loose around her waist, I felt a pull so strong it was almost painful. She didn't look at me the same way, or maybe she did, but I was too afraid to meet her eyes for long. We spoke little, words coming out soft and cautious, as if any wrong syllable would shatter the fragile peace that had settled between us. I saw her hands tremble as she poured coffee, watched the way she bit her lip, the way her gaze lingered on my face just a moment too long. My husband came and went, his presence now the strangest part of the world. I was careful, almost too careful, with every word, every movement, hiding what lived beneath my skin. Guilt gnawed at me in the quiet hours. When he hugged me, I stiffened, ashamed of what my heart and body had already given away. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way her hands had learned my body in the dark, the way her lips had said everything we'd never dared speak aloud. I felt split, torn between the life I'd built and the hunger that now colored every thought. We tried to pretend nothing had changed, moving through our days like dancers repeating old steps. But the tension grew heavier, saturating the silence, thickening the air. She brushed past me in the hallway and my whole body went rigid, memory sparking beneath my skin. There were moments when I caught her looking at me, eyes dark with something that matched the ache I carried. Sometimes, late at night, I heard her moving in her room, restless, her presence humming through the walls, keeping me awake with longing and regret. I was haunted by the memory of her mouth on my skin, the whisper of her breath against my ear, the way her body had trembled beneath my hands. I replayed every moment, desperate to hold on to them, terrified of what they meant. Each day I moved a little farther from my old self, slipping into a new version of me that was softer, more vulnerable, and so much more afraid. The boundary between want and fear became blurred, the shadow of what we'd done growing longer with each passing day. I knew what we shared couldn't last, that it was built on stolen time and borrowed nights. But even as guilt threatened to consume me, I ached for her still, longing for the moments when the world narrowed to just her touch and the promise of something wild and fleeting that I could never keep. There was a strange beauty in those days that followed, a fragile happiness woven through moments I would have once overlooked. I lived in two worlds at once, moving through my life as a wife, and yet, just beneath the surface, I was something wholly new, trembling with the memory of my stepsister's touch. Every ordinary action now carried a secret weight. Folding laundry, I would come across one of her shirts, the scent of her skin soft and sweet and impossible to ignore. Setting the table for dinner, I would watch her move through the kitchen, light on her feet, humming quietly to herself, her presence so effortless and alive that I could feel my heart bloom and ache in the same breath. She brought warmth into every space, filling the rooms with laughter and energy. When my husband was home, we played our roles perfectly, circling each other with practiced care, the careful choreography of a house with secrets. But whenever we were alone, the air thickened with possibility. Sometimes, at night, she would pass by my door, her shadow slipping under the crack of light, and I would find myself lying awake, heart pounding, replaying the way her hands had learned my body, the heat of her breath against my neck, the hunger in her eyes. There were moments stolen in the privacy of the dark, her body pressed against mine under thin sheets, my lips tracing the shape of her shoulder, our whispers dissolving into need. I memorized the way her skin felt beneath my fingertips, the softness of her stomach, the rise and fall of her chest, the low sound in her throat as she arched beneath me. Each encounter felt like it might be the last, and that knowledge made every touch desperate, every kiss more honest. The world outside faded in those moments, leaving only the pulse of her heartbeat and the slow unraveling of restraint. She would cling to me in the aftermath, our limbs tangled, sweat cooling on our skin, and I would trace circles along her back, wanting to slow time, to keep her with me just a little longer. But morning always came, drawing us back into the daylight, forcing us to become careful once again. She would leave my bed quietly, slipping down the hall to her own room before the sun had fully risen, leaving behind the ghost of her warmth and the ache of longing. In the brightness of the day, I would watch her from a distance, longing to reach for her, to pull her close and promise her forever, but words felt useless, fragile things. We clung to small rituals, shared breakfasts in the stillness of the morning, laughter in the quiet before sleep, the secret squeeze of her hand beneath the dinner table. I started to notice how my happiness had changed its shape, become something that trembled beneath the surface, vulnerable to the slightest shift. A careless word, a suspicious glance from my husband, even a moment of distance between us could send fear surging through me. I was walking a tightrope, balancing joy and dread, hope and guilt, always knowing that what we had was temporary. Still, I couldn't let her go. Even as the truth of our situation became clearer, I grew more reckless, seeking her out at every opportunity, finding reasons to brush against her in the kitchen, to linger at the bathroom door, to watch her as she read sprawled out on the living room rug. She would catch my gaze sometimes, her eyes full of longing and sadness, as if she, too, knew we were living on borrowed time. There were days when it almost felt normal, like we were just two women sharing a house. But then a single glance or a secret smile would bring it all rushing back, the truth of what we had done, the impossibility of wanting what we wanted. We never spoke about the future. It hovered between us, a shadow always at the edge of the room. Instead, we focused on the present, on savoring every stolen moment, on making memories that would keep us warm when the world inevitably caught up to us. She would whisper my name in the darkness, her breath hot against my skin, and I would hold her tighter, as if I could anchor her here forever. But always, there was a sense of impending loss, the knowledge that happiness built on secrecy is as fragile as glass, beautiful but always at risk of breaking. On the quietest nights, when the house was silent and I could hear nothing but the sound of her breathing beside me, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could keep this secret world alive. But deep down, I knew the truth, that even the most careful hands can't protect what was never meant to last. So I cherished her, loved her fiercely and completely, hoping that the memory of her would be enough to sustain me when everything else was gone. And for a little while, that hope was enough. The end did not come with a fight or a storm of words. It came quietly, in the slow unraveling of the days, in the heaviness that grew between us with every passing hour. I felt it in the way she moved through the apartment, no longer humming, her footsteps softer, her laughter rare. There was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a shadow that deepened each time she glanced at me when she thought I wasn't looking. We became careful again, too careful, as if the walls themselves could sense the shifting tide. My heart pounded in my chest with every moment of silence, with every secret look exchanged across the dinner table, With every night I lay awake listening for her, wishing she would come to me and knowing she wouldn't. One morning I watched her pack her things, her movements slow, deliberate, as if she was trying to memorize every detail of the room, every piece of our life together before she let it go. She folded her shirts with shaking hands, tracing the seams as if they held the memory of every touch, every embrace we had shared. I stood in the doorway, unable to speak, my throat thick with words I couldn't say. She paused once, her eyes meeting mine, and in that moment I saw it all, the love, the regret, the impossible hope that had carried us through the nights. For a second I wanted to rush to her, to beg her to stay, to promise her something I could never truly give. But I stayed rooted, unable to bridge the chasm between us. The last hours together moved in slow motion. She left small things behind, a hairbrush, a book, a faded sweatshirt I had once borrowed. I touched them as if they could hold her here a little longer, as if I could stop time with the pressure of my hand. I followed her from room to room, helping her gather the last traces of her life here, my chest aching with every step. We didn't touch, didn't risk breaking the fragile calm with a single gesture, both of us knowing that one slip would be enough to bring down all the walls we had built. When the moment finally came, it was as ordinary as it was devastating. She picked up her suitcase and walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. The apartment was filled with a silence so thick I could barely breathe. She turned to look at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears, her lips parted as if she was searching for words that would make this easier. There were none. I tried to memorize every detail, the line of her jaw, the way her hair fell across her forehead, the small scar near her eyebrow. She looked back at me one last time, and in her gaze I saw everything we had been and everything we could never be. Then she was gone, the door closing with a soft finality that echoed through every room. After she left, the apartment felt hollow, too quiet, the air heavy with all the things we had left unsaid. I moved through the rooms as if searching for her shadow, touching the spaces where she had once been. Her scent lingered on the pillows, her laughter haunted the hallway, and everywhere I looked I saw reminders of the life we had built, brief and shining, now reduced to memories. I went through the motions of daily life, work, chores, dinners with my husband, moving like a ghost through the world, pretending I was whole while inside I felt undone. I replayed every moment with her, every stolen night, every whispered confession, every desperate embrace. I tried to find solace in the memories, in the certainty that for a while, I had been truly seen, truly loved. But the ache of her absence was constant, a dull throb beneath my ribs that never faded, no matter how much time passed. Sometimes I would find myself reaching for my phone, wanting to text her, to hear her voice, to ask if she missed me too. I always stopped myself, knowing that we had both made the only choice we could. Love, when built on secrets, cannot last, no matter how fierce or honest it feels in the dark. As the weeks went by, I learned to live with the emptiness, to carry the weight of what we had shared without letting it drown me. I found a strange comfort in the ache, a bittersweet gratitude for the brief happiness we had claimed. I kept her things tucked away in the back of a drawer, unable to let go completely. In quiet moments, I would close my eyes and remember her laugh, her warmth, the way her body felt curled against mine in the dark. I knew I would never be the same, that a part of me would always belong to her, to the woman I had dared to love and lost. In the end, I accepted that some stories aren't meant to have happy endings. Some loves exist only in the space between what is and what can never be. I carried her memory forward, a secret comfort, a reminder that I was once brave enough to follow my heart, even when the world told me not to. And though she was gone, she had changed me. I was softer, fuller, less afraid of my own longing. I learned to cherish the quiet ache, to find beauty in the memory of a love that burned bright and faded, leaving behind only the echo of possibility and the hope that one day, in another life, we might have found a way to stay.